Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're diving into something that is, frankly, profoundly personal and honestly, incredibly powerful. We're unpacking the priority skills you need for studying self-intelligence. Have you ever wondered how to kind of systematically deconstruct your own identity? So you can become a way more effective and self-aware person? Well, you're in the exact right place. We're gonna walk through a highly structured approach using two really cool primary frameworks to build what we call the architecture of self. Before we get to the frameworks, though, I really want you to stop and ask yourself something. Do you know how others truly view you? And I mean, not how you hope they view you, right? Not how your absolute best friend sees you on your best day. But truly, objectively, how does the world actually perceive your actions and your personality? It's a slightly terrifying question, isn't it? I mean, we all have blind spots. But the whole study of self-intelligence is about turning the lights on in those dark corners and turning that fear into genuinely empowering data. Okay, let's dive right into a roadmap for this explainer. We're covering 5 key areas today. First, the self-intelligence framework. Then, mapping with SWOT. Third, decoding the Jauhari window. Fourth, selecting data resources. And finally, acting maturely on our findings. All right, let's start by laying the foundation with Section 1, the self-intelligence framework. So at its core, self-intelligence is completely about identification and action. It's essentially the ability to identify your own view of yourself, placed right up alongside how others view you, and then letting that lead to mature action. Notice that this isn't just sitting around and passively meditating on your feelings. No, it's an active, structured study. It requires pulling data from both the inside and the outside to basically build a complete, high-resolution picture of exactly who you are. What's really fascinating here is the inherent tension. On one hand, you've got the self's view. Your internal narrative, your good intentions, your private struggles. On the flip side, you have the other's view, which is your external impact, your actual behaviors, and how you literally land when you walk into a room. We tend to judge ourselves by our intentions, right? But the world judges us by our actions. Bridging that massive gap between these two views is the entire goal of this self-intelligence study. And to bridge that gap, we're definitely going to need some tools. Which brings us to Section 2, mapping with SWOT. Now, you've probably heard of a SWOT analysis before, maybe in a corporate boardroom or some business class. But here's the twist. This approach brilliantly applies that exact same strategic framework directly to you. Within the context of our self-intelligence study, SWOT is utilized to map out the internal and external aspects of the self. Think of it as giving us a structured grid to organize the total chaos of our own personalities and all that feedback we get from the world. We basically divide our personal architecture into 4 distinct quadrants. Strengths and weaknesses, those are your internal factors, the things that are inherent to you right this second. Opportunities and threats are your external factors, meaning how your environment actually interacts with those traits. By filling this out, you stop guessing about your potential, and you start looking at a literal map of your current reality. It forces you to ask the hard questions. What am I naturally good at? Where do I fall short? And crucially, how does the outside world react to both? But, SWOT alone isn't quite enough to capture the full picture of human perception. So let's transition to Section 3, decoding the Jauhari window. To really nail this down, we integrate the Jauhari window, which is actually commonly spelled Jauhari, by the way, into the study. It's this fascinating psychological tool specifically designed to help participants identify self and others' views. So while SWOT gives us a strategic map of our traits, the Jauhari window gives us a map of our awareness. It perfectly visualizes what we know about ourselves versus what everyone else knows about us. Let's see how this builds. It breaks our awareness down into 4 panes, almost like a literal window. The open area contains things both you and others know about you. Easy enough. The hidden area holds the stuff you know, but you intentionally keep secret from everyone else. Then there's the unknown area. That's essentially a mystery box of things nobody knows yet. But the absolute most critical pane for our self-intelligence study is the blind area. These are the things others see in you that you are completely, blind to. And honestly, shrinking this blind spot is the very essence of identifying how others view you. So how exactly do we shrink that blind spot? Well, we need information. Welcome to Section 4, selecting data resources. We follow a super clear 3-step methodology here. First, you have to choose your data resources. Second, you use those resources to identify the contrasting views of yourself and others. And third, you act maturely from those findings. I mean, you can't just guess what's in your blind spot, right? By definition, you literally cannot see it. You absolutely have to gather actual, reliable external data. And it is absolutely critical to be strategic about who you choose as your data resources for this exercise. Because here's the harsh reality: not all data is good data. Let's be real, if you only ask your mom for feedback, you're going to get some heavily skewed data. She thinks you're perfect. But if you only ask your biggest rival, it's going to be skewed in the total opposite direction. You really need a carefully curated group of peers, mentors, and maybe even subordinates. People who can offer objective, honest, and varied perspectives so you can accurately populate your SWOT and Jauhari frameworks. Once you finally have that objective data, you enter the last and honestly probably the most difficult phase of the whole process. Section 5, acting maturely on findings. So the crucial point we need to make here is this: insight without action, it's really just trivia. You must act maturely from the findings. Let's face it, when you discover something uncomfortable in your blind spot, or you identify a glaring weakness in your SWOT analysis, the completely natural human reaction is defensiveness. It stings. We've all been there. But acting maturely means checking your ego at the door. It means looking at the data objectively, accepting the tough reality of how others view you, and then actually making conscious, constructive adjustments to your behavior. Which brings us right back to you. We've mapped out the entire architecture today. We've integrated SWOT to map your traits, utilized the Jauhari window to expose your awareness, talked about gathering objective data, and finally, committing to mature action. It is an incredibly powerful system, but a system really only works if you turn it on. So I'll leave you with one final thought. Are you ready to do the work, ask the hard questions, and discover your own blind spots? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, happy learning!